Hello and welcome back. I'm Jessica Taneja. Very good morning to all our viewers, and let's take you around the world in 30 minutes. We'll start with news from around India first. 6 people have been killed while 11 have been injured after fire broke out in an under-construction building in Mumbai on Wednesday night. The fire was caused by a gas cylinder explosion in the Prarthana building, which is near Kishore Kumar Garden in Juhu. Cautioning China over its attempts to silently take over Indian territory, Army Chief General Bipin Rawat has warned of a two-front war on the western and northern borders. General Rawat said that Indian forces need to be prepared for salami slicing and testing limits of India's threshold. A special Tara court would pronounce the quantum of sentence against all the convicts of the 1993 Mumbai bomb blast case today. The court had convicted 6 people, including the mastermind of the attack, Mustafa Dosa and Abu Salem, on June 16 this year. And TTV Dinakaran, along with his loyalist MLAs, will be meeting Tamil Nadu Governor Vidyasagar Rao today. He is likely to submit a representation to the governor to prove the support that he, amongst his 119 MLAs, the 19 MLAs, the meeting comes a fortnight after his supporters met the governor, expressing lack of confidence in Chief Minister Edappadi Palaniswamy. The Supreme Court will hear the Satluj-Yamuna link canal issue today. Back in 2016, the Apex Court had termed the law passed by Punjab government in 2004 to terminate the SYL canal, agreeing, in fact, with the neighbouring states, which said it was unconstitutional. After being trolled on social media for his advertisements featuring Goddess Durga, celebrity hairstylist Jawed Habib has apologised for offending religious sentiments. The newspaper ad shows Goddess Durga along with her children Kartik, Lakshmi, Saraswati and Ganesh at Habib's salon, along with the tag, "Gods do visit JH Salon." India slipped in the World University ranking as its shares of such institutions marginally fell from 31 to 30 in the global 1,000 list, topped by University of Oxford and Cambridge. According to a new assessment, Indian Institute of Science fell from the previous year's 201 now to 250 band. In fact, meanwhile, the Indian Institute of Technologies in Delhi, Kanpur and Madras also dropped at least 1 band. To some international stories now. India and Japan have agreed to collaborate closely in defense production, including on dual-use technologies. This as the two countries resolve to ramp up overall military engagement under the bilateral special strategic framework. Pope Francis arrives on a 5-day trip to Colombia with his hope, in fact, of his presence will unite a nation deeply divided by a peace deal that ended a 5-decade war within Marxist far rebels. Turkey's president said it was time for the European Union to make up its mind whether it wants Ankara to join the bloc. This a day after Germany's Angela Merkel vowed to push the EU partners to consider suspending or ending its accession talks. DNA tests on the dugout of the body Salvador Dali prove that the Spanish woman who brought a legal case was not the surreal artist's daughter. And Dali, who died in 1989, was one of the 20th century's most famous artists. His painting includes the persistence of memory, and he also turned his hand to movies, sculptures and advertising. Brazil's top prosecutor charged former President Luiz, Silva and Dilma Rousseff, along with fellow members of the Workers' Party, with forming a criminal organization. This and the latest accusations in Brazil's sprawling corruption scandal. The prosecutor alleged that 8 members of the Workers' Party, including her and others, in a series of crimes committed such as cartel formation and corruption and money laundering. The Workers' Party claim that these charges are, however, baseless. Angola's ruling MPLA party won the general election, garnering 61% of the votes. The results mean that WION of the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola will replace José Eduardo to become the next president of the country. Now, Santos governed the country for about 38 years. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's hurricane hunters flew through the eye of the Hurricane Irma on Tuesday. The journey was captured on the video showing the storm's massive eye wall as the plane flies through it. Irma is expected to become the second powerful storm to thrash the U.S. mainland in as many weeks, but its precise trajectory is still uncertain. Caribbean mansions owned by President Donald Trump, Johnny Depp, Keith Richards and Oprah Winfrey could be ravaged by the most powerful Atlantic Ocean storm ever recorded. Thousands of British tourists have been told to evacuate the holiday island, and Florida as the hurricane continues on its destructive path. Hurricane Irma roared into the Caribbean, shaking homes and flooding buildings and on a small chain of islands along with a path towards Puerto Rico. The Dominican Republic, Haiti, Cuba and a possible hit, in fact, on the south of Florida. Tourists and local residents thronged Miami's airport on Wednesday looking to get out of the town. This ahead of Hurricane Irma's arrival. Airlines adjusted flight schedules, made cancellations and assured passengers they would not have to pay unusually high fares ahead of the storm's arrival. Kentucky's governor and the state's last abortion clinic will square off in a federal courtroom in a case that could make it the first U.S. state without an abortion provider. In a 3-day trial, the state will argue before a U.S. district judge in Louisville that EMW Women's Surgical Center does not have proper state-required agreements with a hospital and an ambulance service in case of medical emergencies. U.S. President Donald Trump has said on Wednesday he would not get into great detail about his tax reform plan in the next 2 weeks. He listed his broad principles for tax reform to include simplifying the U.S. tax code and providing tax relief to middle-class Americans. A temporary restraining order was granted to halt the removal of Robert E. Lee's statue in Dallas' Turtle Creek neighborhood. A hearing has been scheduled for today. The Dallas City Council has approved a resolution to immediately remove the statue by a 13-1 vote early on Wednesday. Ousted Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is likely to return to Pakistan on Friday to face cases against him, days after he went to London to see his ailing wife, who underwent a throat cancer surgery. Sharif was disqualified by the Supreme Court on July 20 this year in the Panama Papers case. Pakistan media believes that China may not even block India when it comes with a resolution to blacklist Jaish-e-Mohammed chief terrorist Masood Azhar in the UN Security Council. This after China signed the BRICS Declaration 2017 that condemned terror groups operating from Pakistan. Lebanon has identified the bodies of 10 of its soldiers found along the Syrian border in zone taken from, back from the Islamic State. Just last week, Islamic State had held the territory along the border for years and took Lebanese troops captive in 2014 when they briefly overran the town of Harsal with other militants, which is one of the worst spillovers of the Syrian conflict into Lebanon. Hungary said on Wednesday by a ruling by the European Union's highest court that member states must take in refugees and asylum seekers was appalling and unacceptable. The country flagged further legal battles with European authorities over the matter. The European Court of Justice found that the EU was entitled to order national governments to take in quotas of mainly Syrian refugees relocated from Italy and Greece. British Prime Minister Theresa May called on Parliament to support legislation to sever political, financial and legal ties with the European Union, a step towards Brexit. The opposition says it will challenge, and the repeal bill is central to the government's plans to exit the bloc in 2019, untangling Britain from more than 40 years of EU lawmaking. Liberal Democrat leader Vince Cable claimed that British Prime Minister Theresa May suppressed up to 9 studies that found immigration does not hit the wages or jobs of the UK workers. May has repeatedly defended plans to impose tough curbs on EU workers after Brexit, this by arguing they are needed to protect Britons in lower paid jobs. Nova, Victoria and London won the dubious honour of being UK's worst new building of 2017. The London office block building has been described as a bright red hideous mess. It is the 6th consecutive time a London building has scooped the dubious honour by the Building Design magazine. A new report from the Public Religion Research Institute reveals that only 43% of Americans identify themselves as white and Christian, whereas in 1976, 81% Americans described themselves as white and part of the Christian denomination. The survey was conducted on 101,000 people across 50 states in the country. Anti-white supremacy activists held a march for tolerance, braving a rainy day in Washington on Wednesday. This comes in the wake of a deadly August rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, organized by white nationalists. US President Donald Trump's decision to end the protections and benefits for young people who were brought into the United States illegally as children who faces a legal challenge from New York and other states. The New York Attorney General announced a multi-state lawsuit to protest beneficiaries of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, also known as DACA. German Chancellor Angela Merkel was booed and heckled on Wednesday at an election campaign, even in Torgau, when resentment persists at a decision in 2015 to open Germany's borders to hundreds and thousands of refugees fleeing war in Syria and Iraq. The decision helped the rise of the anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany, a party which punished her conservatives in regional votes just last year. A suicide bombing struck the US's largest military base in Afghanistan on Wednesday. The hours after Army General apologized for dropping leaflets found offensive by many in the Muslim country. The explosion rocked the entrance to Bagram Air Base, causing a number of casualties, and Taliban has claimed responsibility for this attack. Thousands of Indonesians, led by Islamist groups, held a rally near the Myanmar embassy in Jakarta on Wednesday. This to protest against the treatment of Rohingya Muslims and demand the cutting of ties between the two countries. Roads were blocked and barbed barriers were put up around the embassy. Some protesters chanted Allahu Akbar, while others shouted slogans such as "Slaughter Myanmar" and "Burn the embassy." Myanmar's National Security Advisor on Wednesday condemned what he called the misinformation campaign being waged around the world in the Rohingya crisis. The situation has forced an exodus of nearly 150,000 Rohingya Muslims, which had fled to Bangladesh in just less than 2 weeks. Every day for the past few weeks, hundreds of Rohingya Muslims carrying their children and their most essential belongings have been arriving at the Longdong crossing in Myanmar to make their way to Bangladesh. An attack by Rohingya insurgents on Myanmar security forces has led to the killing of at least 400 people. An exodus of nearly 150,000 Rohingyas, remember, to Bangladesh, leading to a major humanitarian crisis now. A Gurudwara in the United States, in the state of California, in the United States, in fact, has been vandalized with hate messages on its walls, including on calling for nuking Sikhs. The incident took place at the Vermont Gurudwara in Los Angeles, also known as Hollywood's Sikh Temple. For the first time since the app scam scandal 36 years ago, a sitting U.S. senator will go on trial for bribery. And Bob Mendes, a Democrat from New Jersey, is accused of intervening with federal officials on behalf of a wealthy benefactor in exchange for lavish gifts, including luxury vacations and major political contributions. The trial could have outsized the impact in Washington, where Republicans maintain a thin edge in the Senate. A U.S. House unanimously approved on Wednesday a sweeping proposal to speed the deployment of self-driving cars without human controls that bar states from blocking autonomous vehicles. The bill now goes to the Senate and would allow automakers to obtain exemptions to deploy up to 25,000 vehicles without meeting existing auto safety standards in just the first year. Two people have been arrested after police found components that can be used to make explosive in an apartment in a Paris suburb. Police describe it as a bomb factory, and police source said the two people arrested were driving a small van that belonged to the flat's tenant. Catalonia's regional government approved on Wednesday a law to hold an independence referendum, setting up a clash with the Spanish government that has vowed to stop what it says would be an illegal vote. Spain's foreign minister said the country will be betting on expanding relations with key sectors and supporting Cuba's economic development. Alfonso Dastis is on an official visit to Cuba to strengthen ties after the 2016 signing of the first political dialogue and cooperation agreement between Cuba and the European Union. He said Spain is also hoping to expand cooperation in construction, energy and financial private sectors. France plans to pass legislation this year to, in fact, phase out all oil and gas exploration and production on its mainland and overseas territories by 2040. This makes France the first country to do so. And President Emmanuel Macron wants to make France carbon neutral by 2050 and plans to curb greenhouse gas emissions by leaving fossil fuels blamed for contributing to global warming in the ground. Togo's opposition called on Wednesday for immediate resignation of President Faure Gnassingbe, rejecting a government move to introduce term limits as the protests gained momentum. Tens and thousands of protesters clad in red, orange and pink marched through the streets of the capital, Lomé, and security forces looked on, and some carried banners bearing slogans including "Free Togo" and "Faure should resign." Denmark's Prince Henrik, the husband of Queen Margrethe, has been diagnosed with dementia, a condition that has affected his behavior and judgment. The announcement came weeks after the 83-year-old announced he did not want to be buried next to his wife, saying that he had never been acknowledged as her equal. A total of 1,085 students and teachers were evacuated from a school on Tuesday night This due to rain triggered flash floods in China. The flood swelled the river in only a few minutes, destroying walls of schools and classrooms. The maximum depth of the flood reached 2 meters. Burgundy's renowned wine district of Chevrelis in France has suffered from extreme weather such as spring frosts and worrying producers as they enter a second year of diminished harvest. In April this year, frost damaged the vines across France, and the growers resorted to using candles, heaters and even the downtrodden from helicopter to try and save their crops. French fashion companies Kering and LVMH announced that they will stop hiring excessively thin models worldwide under a new charter developed in response to continued criticism that the industry encourages eating disorders. And France banned ultra-thin models, remember, under a rule in 2015 law. The new rules come into effect ahead of Paris Fashion Week this month. That's all we have for you in this edition, but more news and updates will continue here on WION. Do stay tuned. Do follow all of our stories on our social media platforms, also our website, WIONnews.com for more updates. Thanks for watching.